Good morning.
Okay. So it's 9 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I would like to have a roll call, please.
Stuart Shea,
Here.
Andy Besser,
Here.
Philip Spiegel,
Here.
Justin Delacruz,
Here.
Tracy Lesage,
Here.
Kelly Condon,
Here.
Robert Burchuk,
Here.
Larry Chung, Terry Lewis.
Here.
Okay.
We have a quorum. So at this point, I want to have any public comment? Anybody from the vast masses out there? Hearing none, or seeing none, then we'll proceed. Just like to first make an introduction. If you introduce yourself, it'd be great.
Happy to. My name is Greg Shin. I work for the State Bar of California in the Office of Programs with Donna. Until recently, I worked in the Office of Admissions for about 5.5 years. Sorry, I'm a little overdressed. I thought I'd be safe more than sorry, so glad to be here.
And you're here to,
I'm here to, as a casual observer, Donna asked if I could assist her with some of the issues that came up with the Board of Trustees meeting. So here as a resource, also work with Michelle periodically. So.
excellent.
And we'll get more into sort of what Greg's role will be interacting with you all as we talk about the follow-on to the appointments.
Excellent. Just so you all know, several of you have asked, the Board of Trustees voted yesterday, and I guess the best way to say it, and well, I'll let you were there.
Yeah.
You can maybe explain it, Justin.
So there were 3 options that were presented to the Board of Trustees. The option 1 was to keep the state bar, or keep LAP within the state bar as is, with a couple of reviews of the lawyers or the Oversight Committee's role. The second option was to keep the mandatory portion, that is the participants who are in the discipline portion, and as well as the CBX participants separate and within the bar, and then separate the voluntary portion of the LAP outside of the state bar. And then the final option was to separate LAP completely from the state bar, including mandatory and voluntary participants. And the board voted after quite a bit of discussion. Stuart gave comments at the very beginning of the meeting. I gave a brief public comment right after the discussion of the item. And the board voted to narrow down the number of options that they were considering and eliminated option 1, which would have been to keep LAP as it is within the state bar. And so now they're requesting additional information from staff in considering between options 2 and 3, whether to do a hybrid, keep LAP within the bar, or to completely separate it. Is that about right?
So that's what we're doing, and I'm sure we'll have some more discussion about it, but I thought everybody should at least be able to hear that issue.
Did they give an opinion about why they chose that?
Well, Kelly,
Oh,
why don't we
that's-
just report it, because we're going to go
Oh,
through
okay,
it in
okay.
depth.
Okay, sorry.
Not a problem. And then that's it for my report. We're going to go to the consent item, and that's the approval of the minutes. And they're in there in your packet of your stuff in the back. And I'll give you a minute if you haven't read them.
It's the 3rd page.
3rd page. I knew that. And I'll need a motion if anybody wants to.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comment? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll go into staff reports. Update on outreach efforts.
Okay, so You all who were here at the last meeting met Lisa Abella, who is our new senior analyst who is in charge of doing the outreach and education for the program, and she's been working very hard for us over the past, has it even been 2 months since we last met? I don't think so. She's done a lot in a short period of time. So just a short summary of the concrete things that she's done was she mailed letters to 62 law school campuses, and she is setting up talks at law schools, either with the students or individually with deans, and she's got some MCLE presentations at firm set up. She's got 7 law schools and 5 MCLEs for the rest of 2018 so far, with 5 additional 5 waiting to confirm, and then 2 already for January of 2019. So that's way more than we've been able to do before she came on. So she's developed a PowerPoint presentation similar for both populations, but one focused more on students and one focused more on practicing attorneys, that talks about the prevalence of substance use and mental health issues in attorney or law student populations. So like a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about from Patrick Krill and the ABA Betty Ford Hazelden report. And she's using, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Poll Everywhere, but it's this really cool tool that she can use during the presentations for people to give feedback as the presentation is going on. So it's very interactive, and people are able to like write in on polls, like if she asks press A, B, or C, if they're talking about a poll about whether you're a student and a working parent, or student, parent, student and parent and working, whatever, like she's got on her polls, and then talk about that and how much stressors people have in their lives. And it also can give feedback about what people, the comments that people say about what the stressors are in their lives. They could do like a free answer kind of thing, and it'll like print words bigger if more people say it, and smaller words if only a few people say it. So she's gotten really good feedback about people being engaged and interested and liking that. So so I think that's going really well. It sounds like a commercial for the Poll Everywhere. I have to pay for this. Oh, and I also wanted to share with you a little summary of an email that we got. She presented to Chapman Law School along with Mark Torres-Gill, who's the head of moral character determinations, last Saturday, September 8th. And we got really good feedback, and a professor from the school emailed to thank them for presenting and wrote that it was the finest presentation by State Bar personnel we have ever had here. And then the following Monday, one of our clinical rehabilitation coordinators got a call from a student who had seen the presentation and felt comfortable after hearing the presentation calling us and accessing our services. So that was really a specific cause and effect, which was fabulous. She's been doing a lot of work with our communications department to develop a new brochure for us that's updated, and a flyer that we can hang at law schools or in the library or the dean's office. So that's in process and almost ready to print. This weekend is the California Lawyer Association's annual meeting. So she is there at a table yesterday and today, and so she's got a prototype of the brochure. So we don't have like final printing, but just printed out on a color printer brochures that she can hand out, and some sticky notes with our phone number on it and her card. So she's getting the word out with practicing attorneys too. So that, in a nutshell, is what I wanted to say about that.
Just a question on those law schools that are being shown interest. Are they all accredited?
No. Oh, the ones who've shown it. She reached out to all, accredited,
Right.
unaccredited.
Right.
I don't
It's okay. I just
know
thought-
actually who
All right.
responded back.
I was just curious,
Yeah.
more than anything else.
Did that information get presented as part of the discussion that happened the last 2 days? I mean, for the board when they made a decision, did that information get presented to them?
No. That wasn't part of the discussion.
Wasn't part of the
So,
agenda.
but they didn't know that. They didn't know that, like, we made a change, we got someone on board, and then look at the positive outcome that's already occurring from that. They didn't know that.
That was not part of the discussion, so I doubt that they need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't presented in that way. I had, in fact, forwarded those emails
Yeah.
about, from the Chapman Dean, as well as describing the student who called the following Monday, and forwarded those as soon as I got them from Michelle to the executive director. So sort of they were aware of that. I think, Justin, I think maybe it's one of the two of you had talked about that we are, doing some implementation of the strategic plan, and that's why you argued very strongly for let's give it some time and let that work. So we were sort of talking about the fact that there's a lot of activity going on, and and hoping that and asking. It was probably both of you who asked that we that the board sort of see what happens with the activity and the implementation of the strategic plan and outreach efforts. But we didn't go into any specifics.
It was a 30,000-foot view.
Any other comments?
I just like to say, because I know I push so much for outreach and engagement and education, that I am really pleased with what I'm hearing. I'd like to have seen the PowerPoint just to maybe make some comments about it. But I think in general, the brochure and the things that I wanted to be a part of the strategic plan are there. And it sounds like she's doing a really good job. If at all possible, I'd like to go to one of the schools where she's making the presentation, just so I can see how that goes. And I've used Cole before, we've used it in other presentation. And I think what I like about using something interactive is that it speaks to the younger crowd. Mm-hmm. It lets them know that we are cutting edge. And, it's too bad that we weren't able to present what we're doing, because this is huge to me. It's huge. When you're making an attempt to go out and engage and to educate, people know that you're interested, and therefore you get the feedback. That's just a natural thing. So I'm really pleased about this portion.
Yeah, I'll make a note to let you know the student presentation.
Yeah, if there's anything in like the San Fernando Valley, or
okay.
And we're also having her do a dry run of the law school presentation to our probation office, because one of the things that we are asking our probation office to do is to be more alert to people who might have substance use or mental health issues, and Michelle's team is sort of giving them a set of questions that they can ask people, and so they're learning about this as well, and we thought that they would also we could coach them to be a rough audience, so we're doing that dry run. We're setting that up fairly soon, I think.
Yeah, we were going to try and get it done before collab. I don't know if we found a specific date yet, but hopefully in the next couple weeks before collab.
Right.
So that is my update on outreach efforts.
Okay. Recent developments.
Recent developments. So Donna, just one thing.
Yeah, so I wanted to update you on one item that is in the annual fee legislation. The fee legislation is sitting on the governor's desk, awaiting the governor's signature. There is, every other year, the bar is subject to a performance audit by the state auditor. And usually the subject of that audit is picked by the auditor based on information that they receive at the bar, things that they hear, some probably guided from the legislature, but it's a performance audit. This year, the specifics of that audit are directed by the legislation. And the reason for that is we engaged the legislature this year in conversations about the need for a fee increase for the bar. And what they decided made sense was for the auditor to really sort of dig in and do an incredibly detailed performance audit, so we could, to justify the need for the fee increase at the amount that we would be seeking in that fee increase. And so it's going to be a fairly broad audit, which will impact, which will touch LEP as well, which I wanted to bring it to your attention. The language of the statute requires that in conducting the performance audit, the audit shall evaluate each program or division of the state bar receiving support from the annual state bar licensing fees, LAP being one of those. The audit will include an assessment of how much fee revenue, staff, and resources are currently budgeted and subsequently expended to perform existing tasks and responsibilities, whether the state bar has appropriate program performance measures in place for the use of those revenues, and then sort of in a sort of somewhat odd layout, so the audit will be submitted to the board and the Chief Justice and to the legislature on May 1. And the timing is intended such that they can get the information which would justify a fee increase of X dollars, and then they can put that into the fee legislation that is moving through next year. But after the, what the language sentence says is for each program or division assessed by the auditor as part of that performance audit, then the legislative analyst's office will assess whether the bar effectively utilizes licensing fee revenues to maximize efficiency. So the auditor will come in, look at what we do, look at how we will evaluate each program, and then that uses the licensing fee revenue. And then the analyst's office will assess whether we're really effectively utilizing those revenues and whether there are efficiencies that could, if we implemented efficiencies, would reduce the need or the amount of the fee increase that we would be seeking, because we would be saving X dollars if we do something in a specific way. That follow-on by the legislative analyst's office is due by July 1, 2019. So essentially this is set up that after the state auditor, the state auditor's report will come out probably right before the first policy committee hearing on the fee legislation, and then the legislative analyst's office report will come out before the policy committee hearing in the second house of the legislature. So there will be an opportunity to incorporate information that is gleaned from both pieces of the review as the fee legislation is moving through next year.
What are those dates, roughly? When you say when they're going to come out?
So the state auditor's report, the audit is due May 1st,
Okay.
and the legislative analyst's office report is due July 1.
So you're saying between May and, God bless you, May and July will have an opportunity to respond?
So
State bar will have an opportunity.
we will be provided a copy of the audit. We won't have input in the, they will be coming to us and they will be sitting, I imagine, they will be sitting with Michelle, they will be sitting with sort of all of the offices that receive the fee revenue. They'll be asking for data and information on how we sort of process our work. And they are, the scope of this audit is pretty big, and so they are interested in starting as soon as possible. In fact, we're talking about getting, executing the contract with them ASAP, even though the legislation hasn't yet been signed. But they are very interested in starting to dig in because they know it's a short timeline for a big audit. So we will be providing the information that they're seeking, but they will be, as I read it, they will be providing the audit, the finished audit, to the Supreme Court, the legislature, and the bar at the same time.
So that strikes me as a very challenging and daunting task for them in the face of uncertainty about how the program will be structured. They may be able to look retrospectively, but without a definitive plan for how the program will proceed, it would be very hard to determine what the cost structure would be.
So, is that may be our
Transition.
Our transition into sort of the next steps for Appendix I.
I wanted to make a comment about that. To what extent, for purposes of LAP, can we engage Patrick Krill to talk about, I don't want to call it inefficiencies, but the underutilization of LAP programs across the nation?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, we're underutilized. I don't think anyone's challenging that, but LAPs in general are underutilized. So to what extent can we engage Patrick Krill or anyone else who has that expertise to kind of present that information to the auditor's office, so they don't just see, oh, well, they have this big savings, they're underutilized, without that reference point.
So I think the report that went to the board on Appendix I contains some comparative data. If it didn't, we've sort of looked at it in prior drafts. So we do have some comparative data of other states. One of the things that we certainly talked about, and I'm fairly certain the final report that went to the board talked about, is, as we all discussed at the last meeting, 2 meetings ago, I think, there is sort of a, are we comparing apples to apples question? Because how we track utilization may be different from how another state tracks utilization. If they are tracking the number of phone calls into their hotline and we are tracking the number of formal intakes into the program, then it's a hard comparison to make. I recall, Michelle, that there was an attempt to take our numbers and put it into that structure of if we were to call our intakes or the calls to a hotline. I think we put that number in the report. Is that correct?
Yes, it's on page, well, if any of you have looked or have in front of you the agenda item from the Board of Trustees meeting on Thursday, it's on page 63 if you want to look it up, but he has a table, Richard Schaffler, who you all met at the last meeting. When he presented this to the board, he did make a comment that LAP is underutilized, which is a problem across the country with all of the LAPs. I don't think that was written here, but he said it when he was talking.
My other observation would be that the report that went to the trustees brought to my attention that interest in budget matters was considered largely beyond the scope of this committee. So in a sense, I'm wondering, how is this our business?
So this was just letting.
It's just informational?
Yeah, it's informational. I don't necessarily expect you to be involved in the audit, but I wanted you to know that it was something that would be going on.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no.
I found the report clarifying in some ways regarding.
And I wanted to make my comment clear that the engagement of Patrick Krill, or further engagement of Patrick Krill to talk about the utilization of LAPs across the nation was specifically for the purposes of the audit,
right,
as opposed to any additional work for the appendix I.
Right. No. I realized that, and I was just pointing out that I think we have that data.
Okay.
So if the table that Michelle was pointing everybody to, it does sort of we do look at sort of number of active lawyers, number as of 2014. Number of client files opened, and that we increased that number to reflect the calls, and then the files open per 10,000 active attorneys. So looking at that, sort of files open per 10,000 active attorneys, California is 35 per 10,000 active attorneys. Some states are lower, some states are higher, and we only have 6 states in this chart, but Florida at 24, so lower than California, Illinois at 42, Massachusetts at 24, Michigan at 21, and Texas at 69 files open per 10,000 active attorneys.
And he has in the footnote 57 down there how we tried to standardize it. So I talked the reason those states were included is because those were larger states that had programs somewhat more similar, but not Texas. Texas is just referrals. So people call, they give them a referral. So there isn't a case management part of it like we do in professional monitoring, but it was talking to people from the other programs and finding out what they counted as client files open, and then including ours. So that includes our informational calls, like Texas has, and it includes our transition assistance, so like the referrals for individual counseling. So that's how we arrived at these numbers.
All right. I think now we're going to move into the business end of the agenda.
No, actually, the appendix I part is part of the recent development.
Okay, good.
Staff report item B was Donna's comment. It was a recent development about the audit, but then the other recent development is what happened Thursday. So
okay,
I don't know where you wanted to put it.
Yeah. So the next steps with regard to the LAP Oversight Committee, and all of the sub-entities that were acted upon one way or another at the board meeting on Thursday. The next step is for staff to work on an implementation plan. So what would it look like? What are the things that are required to do? What's the impact on staff? What's the fiscal impact? What rules would need to be changed? What statutory changes would be needed? So when it comes to LAP, unlike many of, not all, but many of the other sub-entities, what the board would be putting forward is what the board thinks is the right thing to do. But there are statutory changes that are needed to effectuate it. The program and the committee are set forth in statute, and so what the board is adopting is what they think is right. But the legislature would need to agree with that to implement all of those changes. We'll be coming up hopefully on Monday with sort of a rubric for what the implementation plans are going to look like in terms of all of the categories we're going to be looking at. As I said, impact on staff, statutes that need to change, rules that need to change, budget impact, impact on the committees, more committee meetings, less committee meetings, longer committee meetings, shorter committee meetings, how much more work would be coming in-house, et cetera. For LAP, it's sort of interesting because we'll be doing implementation plans for option 2 and for option 3. And that will give the board the information that they would need to make that sort of final call, because they just couldn't quite sort of wrap their arms around, did it make sense to have part of the program reside in the bar and part of it reside outside the bar, or should all of it reside outside the bar? And so they wanted to see what those would look like. And I think, so in addition to sort of having to do the implementation plan for both of those, there are sort of multiple ways to look at both of those too, right? Do we contract out? So the bar sort of remains in charge of LAP, but we contract out with other providers? And then sort of what would the analysis of that be? If the big concern is underutilization, and the big problem with utilization is confidentiality, the fact that the state bar is still sort of the provider of the service, we're just contracting it out, that may not solve that problem. So then would you look for a separate entity to form, the way that California Lawyers Association separated from the bar and created a nonprofit. So those pieces of the analysis would have to be made as part of option 2 and option 3, so we could give the board sort of the whole picture of what that might look like. You look perplexed.
I really am perplexed, because as I read the appendix, none of this is the purview of this committee.
So what was unique about LAP is that the recommendation in the original Appendix I of the 2017 Governance in the Public Interest Task Force did talk more about the program and less about the Oversight Committee. For most of the other areas, the Governance in the Public Interest talked about the sub-entity and the relationship between the role of the sub-entity, the charge of the sub-entity, the relationship between the sub-entity and the board. With regard to LAP, the Governance and Public Interest Task Force talked a lot about the program itself and where the program should be housed, which then necessarily has an impact on the Oversight Committee and whether it makes sense to retain the Oversight Committee or in what form you would retain the Oversight Committee. So it's a little different because we're looking at the program, not just the committee per se. But
I'm not concerned about whether there's a continuing role here or not.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm just concerned about, is the bar interested in our input on these questions?
So yes, and so that's what I was getting to. So we have to present these implementations to the board in November, and Greg is going to sort of take the lead on pulling together the implementation plans. He's obviously been working very closely with Michelle, but I want him to sort of have the responsibility for sort of pulling together the budget items, pulling together the various pieces of it. I was hoping that you would provide 2 members of the Oversight Committee that could also work with Greg on this, provide input as we're going forward in developing the implementation plan.
I'm curious who has the lead on like the legislation portion of it, because that's really your problem, right? I mean,
So
you have to get it all approved because they could say no. And
Right.
then
Right,
we
they
lost
can
all
absolutely-
this time
yeah.
and energy, and
So
the
for-
attorneys
yes.
are suffering.
So for now, all we're doing is identifying the statutory changes or rule changes that would be needed, and then as part of our legislative agenda for the 2019 legislative year, we would be pursuing legislation to effectuate all of the changes that, whether it was LAP, committee of bar examiners, mandatory fee arbitration program, there are a variety of statutory changes that are needed, probably none as extreme as for the LAP, but so that would be done as part of the legislative program. So nothing Nothing that is directed by statute could be implemented until the statutory change happens.
Yes, I realize that, that's why I asked that
Yeah.
question.
So, in answering your question, I think Justin would be an excellent, because he's into it, but he's also our golden child, I'll call you golden, because he went through the program.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that would be an excellent choice, so thank you for volunteering.
Thank you for volunteering.
Yeah.
And then, the other person I would, happy to put in there would be, if Kelly, would you be interested in doing this?
And I'm imagining it would probably be a series of conference calls. And review of
And
materials.
we're reviewing materials and going, so, yeah,
Great, thank you for volunteering.
I mean, Justin, you can't back out.
Oh, no.
Easy now.
Yeah, and I do have to say, the board, I'm not sure if you left immediately after, but they mentioned your name, sort of, they thanked you at the time, but mentioned your name several times, sort of, through the end of the session. They really appreciated your input and the perspective of, I think one of the things that made them sort of scratch their chin a little bit was the comment that Justin made about the value of having both the voluntary folks and the disciplinary assistant folks in the groups together, and that really sort of made them sort of question, well, should we just be separated apart? Does that make any sense? Or because that was a sort of an interesting perspective that they thought of.
I mean, obviously, my purpose for that was to make the argument that everything should stay together within the bar, but it had the complete opposite effect, so unintended consequences.
Go ahead, Don.
So that's what I have on Appendix I, so I'm happy to answer any questions and.
So in doing that, I just want to say that, I'm sorry, I'm a little slower thinking. I don't have a slower computer in here. I want to make sure that I reach out, to both of you, just in terms of, because you're really looking at thinking about values and outcome and program design, and so it's. I think that we're going to need to do some background research, which I don't, Michelle, I don't know if that's something you're also starting to do or not, because I think there's some larger questions that if we had research, and I don't think it's really been within the scope of what Patrick's been focusing on, and I don't know if he's done or hasn't done, because that's just not really kind of where his main impetus has been, that we should probably do, So I guess, I will do it, but I'm also saying I'm going to reach out to others also.
And it's one of the reasons that I put Greg on this project is because I don't know how much time Michelle has to do something like that, but Greg is, Greg's role has been very heavily admissions right now as they are rolling out the admissions information management system, a new case management system for admissions. But sort of once that was done, sort of the Greg's placement with me in the office is for the purpose of providing assistance for everybody. He's been working on everybody's budgets. He's so sort of learning sort of everything about all of the offices in the programs division, and so I want to use his considerable research skills and writing skills to be able to pull all this together. And so I think maybe the best plan is after I have a high-level implementation plan meeting, which is scheduled for the end of the day on Monday, then maybe we'll be able to get a conference call together, and we should probably start, with the two of you, me, Greg, and Michelle, and sort of talk about what the structure is, and then start identifying some of the work that needs to be done to get us there and assigning responsibility.
Because it also brings up other things, especially is the monitoring that happens in terms of, are those other outside people responsive? What is the quality of the care? What type of care are they giving? There's just a whole range of other questions that start to come up when you start outsourcing.
So when you say research, you're talking about research on what other options are out there already if we were to contract it out?
Well, and other things, so unintended consequences, there's a whole bunch of unintended consequences that you don't necessarily envision until you start to go down that path. And then you realize, oh, okay, well now we have extra costs because there's extra oversight that we didn't do when it was more in-house, now it's out. More administrative sort of stuff, but it's still, that's time-intensive costs, those sort of. Then it becomes an issue of culture that, or turnover of providers. How familiar are they with the issues, and have other people, you know, that are similar, because there's something unique and special about this program that is different than someone just going to any provider. So, I mean, I don't have a well-formulated thought because we're just bringing it up right now, but I'm just saying that I think that it's going to take some thought because there could be other things we're just not apparent right this moment.
That's why you're perfect.
Exactly.
Thank you, Kelly. No, but it's, and it's also good to have a clinical perspective. And that's why I was thinking it. Thank you.
And that's why I mentioned both of you guys too, so.
So, to be fair to our volunteers, Donna, so what is your expectation from the volunteers?
So I will know more, as I said, after our meeting on Monday, but I do think it will be in large part brainstorming sessions, coming up with, here's the things we need to research, Greg doing the research, you reviewing sort of the work product that he's put together. I am not assuming that you are going to go out and necessarily do the research and do the write-ups, but will help us brainstorm what it is we need to figure out in order to comprehensively present an implementation plan for both of those options, and to help us brainstorm through that and then review what we've put together. That's what I'm looking for. So I really think it is a series of conference calls and in reviewing written materials that are provided.
Easy. Yes, Justin.
What's the impact on staff of this implementation portion of Appendix I? Because as Michelle mentioned, there's a ton of momentum with respect to outreach. Obviously, you don't want this to stymie that, whether it stays here or goes somewhere else. That needs to continue. For Michelle, what do you anticipate the impact being?
In terms of morale, in terms of people's attitude.
In terms of workload, let's
In terms
start
of-
there.
Okay. The expectation is that the workload will stay the same. So Lita's going to be continuing with her outreach, continuing to do all the speaking engagement she has, making more. So when things change, it won't be for what we're talking about until at the earliest January of 2020. So we're still going to be continuing the program as is, making the improvements that we've talked about making, at least the ones that will still be relevant through then. So we're still going on as is. I know that people are going to be maybe stressed about the idea of what's going to happen to their jobs if LEP eventually gets outsourced. So I'm keeping people updated as I know the information, just trying to like let people make informed decisions about what they want to do.
So coming from, you know, I'm here as a person, I'm not here representing any other organization, but coming from an organization that's in the middle of huge changes right now, I guess a couple things that I would say is one, there's a whole bunch of literature out there about change management. And the biggest part, you can have whatever your product or your tool is that you're doing with change management, but the biggest part for adoption and successful is the people and the management. And so I would say that it can be maybe a separate thing of, you know, like one of the oversights of change management is that there's all sorts of different approaches. One is ProSci, PROSCI, and all. If you were to take one gem from it about what does it mean the most is communication. Regular communication on an ongoing basis about what is the value and why are we doing this, and then who are your champions and how do you get them to come into it and do it. Because when you go into the theories and the research, and it's regardless of what model you use, it's well substantiated that you're gonna end up dropping people. So the risk here is we're gonna have people who are gonna leave before any final decisions are made. Then we'll start to have a Swiss hole organization and then have difficulty recruiting, because who wants to recruit where there's unknowns? So one, I think maybe we need to really look at that for the employees and how to approach that and what are the key things to help morale and the staff. The second point I would say is that with that communication, it's just really clear that legislative changes. Organizations like this, there's always a lot of talk, which makes people, especially depending on how they approach things like this, high anxiety. But it takes time. There's many unforeseen things that can happen that change the course of the vote. And even when you say January 2020, like, unless this organization all of a sudden is much faster than other government organizations I know of, that would be very ambitious, I would think. Just by the time we do a report, then you really analyze it, then maybe there's other decisions that have to be made, then you look at contracting and just all of that. So, and then kind of the thing I would say is reassurance with that is my personal experience. You usually end up in situations like this where there's more than enough activities for staff that so no one ends up really, unless you're doing like a full-on kind of like reduction in staff and that's the sort of thing. But in situations like this, there's usually other activities that staff need to be done. So no, there's no like, I'm not gonna have a job, I'm not gonna have duties, I'm not gonna have something like that. And if that message is out there, and if that's what the organization believes, and that's continually reiterated, then, and if it's continually reiterated about what our mission is, and then how we need to kind of maybe shift a little bit as the tides change, that may also help. So I think there's kind of like a three-thing approach when we be thinking about for the staff, because that's the key part. Because if we lose the staff, then we can talk about programs all we want, but.
Well, luckily, we are part of a larger state bar, and the employees are unionized, and the management has made a commitment to not lose any staff members in the process. Even though the position might be changed, there are other positions that will be open in other departments and other things available, so.
For licensed clinicians?
Well, the clinicians wouldn't necessarily be doing that same work, but there might be positions at the bar of something else they can do. If they want to, but of course, people might choose if they don't want to, and like Kelly said, end up working elsewhere.
Well, yeah, and it also depends how the separation happens, right? So
Right.
if we keep the discipline and the CBX, that's 60% of the current caseload. We are also looking at revising the way we're doing probation. So probation is, looking at, we'll be doing risk assessments of individuals who are part of the disciplinary system. And will, the end result might be bringing more people into the alternative discipline program, or it might be requiring a lot more assessments to be performed by the clinical rehabilitation coordinators of people who appear that they may have a substance use issue or mental health issue, which was causally related to the discipline problem that they are having right now. So I'm not actually envisioning in that scenario that there would be a loss of work for clinical rehabilitation coordinators. I think that we would continue to need the clinical rehabilitation coordinators at the level that we currently have. If we're talking about separating the whole program, then obviously that analysis would be different. But we did say in the report to the board, and I believe it was in Leah's weekly blast that she sent out to staff yesterday, that what we envisioned, similar to what happened when the bar, the section separated from the bar, that we assured that nobody lost their job as a result of that separation. There are other places in the bar where they can go and other work that can be done. And so that's something that, but you're right, like, you have to keep saying that, because
Right.
if you're saying it once or twice,
No.
does not beat out the anxiety that is pushing down. And so it has to be constant communication.
And-
Absolutely right, Kelly.
And the number one thing they say in research about any type of change management is if you think you've said it enough, you still haven't said it enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terry?
Yeah, I think she kind of answered my question, but my thinking was as a staff person and looking at, if I were a clinician, and looking at the portion that our program actually manages very well, which is the assessment piece. And if people, if that, even if that's a larger part in risk management that we retain and then we outsource the rest, I think I would feel comfortable hearing those words, you know, talking, rather than talking about what we're thinking about doing, is look at the value that we already have, you know, in the clinicians that we do have, you know, because there's a large part of what they do. I don't see it as being outsourced, because we have to go out and do a lot of training and find providers that do specialized things, and these are things, the 60% we specialize in. So if I were an employee, I would be wanting to hear the upside, you know, and you guys could take care of the downside. And yeah, because when you said that, because I'm, you know, if I'm an employee and I know that I might be not have a job in these days and times, I'm definitely looking. You know, I'm keeping my options open. You know, I'm not going to be loyal to a program that, you know, I feel doesn't have my best interest. So I think that's the upside, is that we specialize in certain things that other agencies can't do, and therefore those things are great value. And if we lose portions, we could make that 100% of what we do, rather than, you know, throwing out the baby with the bath, or vice versa. So that's all I really had to say.
Well, and along those lines, I think, although part of me is very tense about the November timeline to provide the implementation report, not for this committee, but for all of them. I think that sort of the positive of that is that the board will be presented again sort of with the two options and what the implementation would look like for each option, and we'll be making a decision in a couple of months. So it's not going to be a year of, do I have a job, do I not have a job? Like, we will have that plan, and then obviously some of it, you know, may never come to fruition depending on what happens with the legislation. But at least there's sort of something in place sooner rather than later, so that it's better to react to what you know than to be guessing constantly. Yeah. And so although, you know, all of these timelines have been ambitious, I think part of the sort of the goal is to get to a decision point, so people aren't guessing and filling the vacuum of lack of information with their own sort of fears about what might happen.
And I just want to add, on behalf of the staff, I really appreciate, Justin, you bringing that up, and the committee having a discussion about how it would impact staff, because I know, I mean, it could potentially impact my job, I suppose, but also I haven't been in this position very long, so as somebody who was a clinical rehabilitation case manager for a long time and not attending these meetings, we had no consciousness that the Oversight Committee even considered what would happen with staff. It was just, you know, high-level stuff about the program. So I will convey that to them. I know they will also appreciate knowing that you're considering all the people here in the program.
Thought, I just was, do you know what the model is with the medical board?
The medical board, so.
Present model, a new model.
So yeah, I know that they had a wellness program, then they got rid of the wellness program because it was not effective, and then I thought we have the information. I don't have it in my head, but I know we do have the information on the medical board.
Yes.
Excuse me. They didn't get rid of the program because it wasn't effective. It was all political. What the medical board did is they ramped up the enforcement side of the medical board. They hired a lot of probation people, and the individuals now either substance abuse or the emotional component, so basically put into probation. And in the beginning, I didn't think it would work well, but it's actually worked very, very well by ramping up the enforcement arm of the medical board. And their program is actually a very good program. Works really, really well. I've been really surprised.
Yeah, you may want to talk to Phil.
The other comment I'd like to make is that, or I have a question actually for Donna. Does the board have the expertise to make an intelligent decision about what to do? Because I'm not convinced that the members of the board have enough experience. I think they're ignorant when it comes to issues of substance abuse. I hate to be that blunt, but that's what it seemed to me to be like.
So, the board has a responsibility of making decisions on everything that's happening in the bar. And they develop the necessary expertise and informational background in order to do that, whether it's with regard to what the appropriate passing score is for the admissions exam, substance use issues, really sort of the wide variety of every issue that the bar deals with. They rely obviously on the staff expertise, the information and research that we can provide them to help inform them to make those decisions and the information that they get from the public comment.
It just seems to me that the input that they should get about dealing with substance abuse issues should come from this committee. And if they don't feel this committee is appropriate, then they need to find somebody else. But I'm not convinced that they have the ability to make a really informed decision. And that's what this committee was supposed to be for.
Maybe that's something we could include when we're looking to report for November, any research or reasons why we make those recommendations that we do implementation, because there's got to be only limited by our creativity the way we can implement these options. So the ones that we choose, we can certainly include in the report. Here's why we chose this option, or here's why we chose to do it this way.
Well, my recollection when the legislation originally occurred was we were an unusual oversight committee to begin with. This is not just public at large and boards. There has to be a clinical element to this, and actually people were chosen because of their background in mental health, drug, and alcohol addiction. So to provide the bar the expertise to make what you called informed decisions. So.
But I think there was a pretty explicit statement in the appendix that the Oversight Committee is probably mispopulated. It's not properly populated, that needs to be reviewed. I mean, I'm almost surprised that there's an interest in input from members of this committee in regards to formulating these two proposals, and wonder if in fact an external consultant would be better suited to establishing a lack of bias and expertise and independence.
Well, what we're not asking for is sort of an evaluation of all of the options again. What we're asking for is thoughts on how we might go about implementing either option 2 or option 3.
Right.
And I do think that you provide valuable, that you provide valuable insight into that. I think just in the 3 seconds of Kelly hashing it through in her head, she had some thoughts on things that we might want to examine in order to answer some of the questions. So
the irony is, it's sometimes maybe our thoughts are useful, but for the most part, we've overstepped. That's what I heard. It's sort of we'll selectively determine, whether your input is useful.
That's one way to perceive it.
But, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it would be helpful, because there are lots of, we need the input of everyone, to have, another meeting after your meeting on Monday where you have a clearer picture of what we need to do moving forward, to have another oversight committee to discuss those issues, because I'm not exactly sure Kelly and I can speak well enough and completely enough for the oversight committee as to the issues with respect to implementation. There are going to be some things that people are interested in and some things people are not, and I think, it would only be fair for us to have everyone have a voice, not just Kelly and I on behalf of the committee.
Well, that could be easily resolved if everyone here is willing to have another meeting.
Sorry, guys.
I'm certainly willing.
And the one comment about budget and stuff is, I think you can't put the hard lines between everything. I mean, you have the strategy and the mission, and budget's going to come from that. And this program initially was set up where, we were supposed to be different than the rest of the nation. We were supposed to really start to approach and treat substance abuse and mental health in a more aggressive manner than some of the other programs. That's why it was funded. So I think that maybe if someone says, well, budget isn't your concern, but it is our concern if we're setting forward strategy and mission because we need the resources to fund that. So I don't know if we can have a hard line. Just a comment.
Well, I see what you're saying, Justin, okay, in your comment. And I'm happy if everyone wants to have another meeting after you've had your meeting and you want to talk to us, I'm happy to do that. It's all entirely up to the committee. I'm not adverse to it, and staff, I'm sorry. I don't think so, but, we could, that's possible, right, Donna?
Sure.
So, if you'd like to do that, we can do that. I don't know what the calendar shows.
The next schedule.
Our next-
December something.
So you're talking in November.
So the report needs to go to the Board of Trustees for their November meeting.
So we need to do this in October. So when's that?
When in November is it?
It is, let's see.
14th and 16th.
I think that is correct.
So does the report have to be done like the evening of the 14th, or does it have to be done?
So the board meeting is the 15th and the 16th. Our items get posted, usually November 9 is when the items would get posted on the board agenda. Obviously, so we would, I think we really need to shoot to get this done by the very end of October.
So we're really looking like we got like 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, easy. So now we're looking, we can have a Halloween meeting. We could do it on the 27th or what's available to everybody.
So I guess I would ask what the goal of the meeting is, because if the goal of the meeting is to affect the written report, then I think the 27th is too late.
Okay.
So I think you would need to move that up.
Let's, the 20th? Is that enough time, you think?
If there are changes made to the report, how long would it take to implement those?
It just sort of depends on,
Okay.
right, exactly.
Well, is 20th a fair day, Donna?
Probably, yeah.
I think the 20th is a fair.
Okay, so we're gonna slide in
You're gonna be doing, is that?
another
I'm here to
meeting
help you, so
October
yeah,
20th.
if you,
Okay,
if
October
October 20th is
20th.
it, then-
here.
Here in Los Angeles?
Yeah. Is most everybody here? Are you?
I'm from Los Angeles, yes.
Okay, good. So,
Got the loan.
yeah, the lone no, okay.
But at least you have family here, right?
Yeah,
That's good.
That you like.
I do like that very much.
It's
Just really like.
What did everyone think of the Friday night meeting? Was that like a
That's not gonna
nightmare?
work.
That
It's
was
too
hard.
hard, too
Okay.
horrible. It's too
That
hard,
traffic
the
is not
Traffic's
gonna
gotten way
work.
too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got it.
And you can't leave
That's
the
a hard
day
no.
early because you work,
No,
so.
that's not right.
Okay, so we got that slated, so the idea is, in theory, to, for you two to meet together, then come back and with your thoughts, share them with the LAP as a whole, get the input, and then move forward.
Right,
And that's fair, that's fair.
ideally we will have done the research that we all talked about needing to get done, we'll have draft write-ups, we'll have all of that, and then it's be a question of, you need to sort of consider this third option, this third sort of subset of option 2 that you didn't think of, and sort of, so it'll be adding to things and revising what's there, but we certainly can't wait to begin writing things up until that meeting.
Right.
Right.
Greg, do you recall if the I know most of the CBE meetings have changed, the committee bar examiner meetings have changed to one-day meetings. I'm trying to remember though, for the October meeting, if that is still a two-day meeting. I think it might be. I only ask because its second day is the 20th.
I don't
But it's here,
recall.
so.
That's true.
Do they webcast their meetings?
Yes.
Okay, then if they're here webcasting, then we won't be able to webcast.
That's not the issue as so much as sort of being able to be fully attentive to them.
What is the time there, frame? Is it an all-day meeting?
So I'm not sure if it's on or not. I'm not sure if it's on or not. I just don't recall because that's their orientation meeting.
Who's this? What-
The committee bar examiners.
Oh, okay.
So they historically had been meeting Fridays and Saturdays when they meet. They're changing that going forward to just a Friday meeting. But I can't remember if the October meeting because it is special because of the orientation and all that. But we'll work that out.
Okay, great. Where are we on this?
On the agenda?
Excuse-
You're asking where were we on the agenda?
Yeah, so are we done with the discussion with I? And the many parts thereof? Okay, then we're moving forward. Then we'll go on to business. Update of implementation of strategic plan, really recommendations.
Okay, so you should all have this list titled Update on Implementation of Strategic Plan, Drill Recommendations, and Workforce Planning Recommendations. So this is a list of the items, not really in a particular order, that you may remember many months ago, it was in a table format. You saw there was a table of all the recommendations when Shelby King was still here, that she had made of all of the recommendations from the different sources, compiled them, and what we need to do in our time frames. So this is pretty much that same information, but updated with what we've been doing on them. And so, you know, I won't read this all to you because you can read for yourself what we've been doing, but I'll highlight a few of the things that I know. Number one on here was to expand the transition assistance service, and I know that was something really important that was important to this committee and that we had done a lot of work on. And we've expanded it in terms of who's eligible for it. So now law students and bar applicants and former attorneys are eligible for it. And we are doing the promotion part of it, of course, like I mentioned with Linda and the outreach that she's doing to the schools. And also, in the oath packet for new attorneys, the second bullet point under B there, flyer in the oath packet, that's the packet that attorneys get once they've passed the bar exam, passed the moral character, they get a packet of materials from the bar about becoming a licensed attorney. And there's now a flyer in there about the LAP and our service, including transition assistance. And any comments or questions on that one? And then I know another huge thing, number 4 on there, eliminating the evaluation committees. This one, as you all know, took a lot of time and work from everybody, and we are almost at the end of.
And number 2, just
Yes.
kind of like Terry, in fact, Terry, I'm surprised you didn't, is, have we all seen that flyer? So just maybe it can just be emailed out, like with the,
On number 2, oh, you mean on the number 1 on B? A flyer
yeah,
in
just
the oath packet?
for awareness for everyone, just if we can just, maybe just email it out as.
Okay.
I'm thinking of you, Terry.
Well, I'm so glad it's in the package. I guess this was another thing that I asked for.
Yeah, because you
so it's
asked for it,
like-
so that's why I was like, I thought you might want to see it.
Well, you know, hey, I'm just happy with a little bit. Small steps.
Michelle?
Yeah.
It says, so target timeframe and status.
Where are you?
1, and then it's B, the very bottom.
Got it.
It says
Ongoing.
target. So our promotion of services will always be ongoing, or is there ever
Yes.
going to be a point where we've kind of tracked or evaluated how much
Well-
better it is compared to how it was before?
The
To
plan.
show progress.
Well,
Yeah.
the promotion is better than it was before.
It exists.
Exists, right. So the promotion is ongoing. There is another item here on data collection, which I think is, I want to say 6. Use data to evaluate the LAP. So hopefully the promotion will affect our numbers with this data. So some of it will be new data, but some of it will be able to compare with previous years. And so Lisa came in June, had some training, is getting going now, so we probably wouldn't see any effect until the end of this year. I don't know at the end of this quarter if we really notice anything yet, but we'll be able to compare the number of calls to lab phone lines and the sources of the referral and the needs.
So, but I think what you're saying though is what are the ongoing metrics that are going to be maintained and accumulated so that we start to have our baseline. So like, the number of schools, the number of people attending, just
Lisa's keeping that, and she has a spreadsheet of this with all those things of the schools or the firms for the MCLEs and when it happened, the number of people attending. I'm trying to think what else is on that.
So if we were to do follow-up, is maybe to have that kind of a committee, just so that we can see what are the metrics, and then someone might have some good input about metrics that we're missing, just, or other ideas, and because what's going to happen is this is going to be the first year, everyone's going to say you have the baseline, everyone's going to be great about that, and then a year from now, people are going to say, well, so what difference did it make that you saw 24 more people than last year, and then they're going to start to have other questions. So we just want to be prepared for that and try to get ahead of the curve.
And we'll be able to see a difference too, because we actually started keeping that spreadsheet when we didn't have an outreach person, but Alex Ufig, who's one of the clinical rehabilitation coordinators, was doing presentations, and so we started with him. So we should already be able to see the difference in the number of presentations and the number of people we reach with having dedicated staff.
So what people are going to get to, this thing is, what's the value? So what's the return on investment? And Terry, I think you have experience in this area because you've been, so I will look forward to your input on that, because that's really what people are going to start to question. They're going to say, it's not that you're not doing goodwill, and it gets to that thing of then, okay, how also are you measuring goodwill?
Yeah, and the difficult thing, right, is there are going to be a host of components that affect it, that affect those numbers. But yeah, we want to see. So we've expanded the transitional assistance service to law students. So the fact that what we want to see is an increase in the numbers of people who are getting the transitional assistance service. Part of that's attributable to the fact that it's expanded to law students. Part of it that will be attributable to the fact that we're doing good outreach on it. Right, so a lot of changes are happening at the same time. So we won't necessarily be able to point to any specific thing, but making sure that we are understanding what are we tracking going forward, and it's not necessarily what we've always been tracking. Right, it's absolutely the number of intakes and the calls that we get, and the TAS, and but sort of figuring out what all of those elements are, so we can say today we're here, next year we're here.
And and some people actually, because the after talk, like after she does the presentation, and the people that come up, I know some places they track it, like for sales and stuff, they track those points of contact. So that might be another. They track the number of people who come, and that there's that kind of follow up. So it didn't come through as a call, didn't come through in our traditional manner. Now she's there, so that might be another measuring point. Because those are conversations that were not happening before.
And if we are tracking sort of hear about the program when people call in, that would be helpful too, because they may have heard about it because of the presentation.
Yeah. The other part about that is one of doing so many public hearings is everybody doesn't have a time to speak, or they just don't have the same, but they might think presentation skills. So I think if we just have cards, if you just for follow-up, and someone can go through those cards, because there may be someone who really needs help but is afraid to make the first step. But if we have some cards, and we can just pass those cards out and collect those cards for people who weren't able to publicly ask a question. And we gather information that way too.
So just blank cards that people can.
You know, yeah, it's just something, just another resource, another way to collect data, another way to follow up.
And then, I don't think it's the focus today, because we have a lot of other stuff, but then after she really established is where's the social media part of it, you know? She put, you know, and I think didn't we have like, that was a follow-up to try and find out what was allowed and not allowed? You know,
Yeah, that is number,
It's on here.
You know, does she have, is there an Instagram account where she's posting, hey, look, I'm presenting today, and then people like it, and then they retwitter it?
So 14 and 15 talk about technology, and a lot of these about disseminating information. We had a meeting with the Office of Communications, and I talked about what our possibilities are, so Lita will continue working with them. The State Bar has its own Facebook page, and it has its own, I don't know if we have an Instagram account. Do you know?
Probably, but we definitely have a Twitter account.
So any information that we wanted to push out would have to go through the Office of Communications. So she's going to be in communication with the Office of Communications to have whatever articles or when there's lost student mental health days to push out information about that through the social media sites.
I follow COLUP on Twitter. I don't know if you guys know if they have a Twitter account. And so there's always a lot of information out there from attorneys and members and even the public in general. So if you want to follow Twitter, I follow it.
Do you follow the State Bar's Twitter?
COLUP.
Oh, COLUP. Yeah. Oh, COLUP has a lot of stuff.
But that's certainly, I appreciate you bringing that out, because that's certainly something that Lita should be talking about with communications is sort of
retweeting.
Is them sort of at appropriate moments retweeting something from
Right.
COLUP.
So that's another measure, just thinking of, you know, that's how people are doing metrics now.
Okay, so, let's see. Talked about evaluation committee, we'll go back to that actually on the next business items. The policy manual is also number 5, this is a really important one, which now that we're making all of these changes, we're not gonna be able to actually know what the policies are going to be too far out, but with the updated policies that we do know about, I've been able to strike the ones that we're not doing anymore. And then,
So wait, just on number 5.
Yeah.
So because, you know, even if the earliest, like you said, would be, you know, a year and a half from now, are there things though that we need to take care of in there just so that we don't have any problems ensue in the next 18 months?
yes, so I should have read this in more detail. So when we talked about the clinical review process, that was a major thing. So the evaluation committee, so it's a working document at this point, so it's not a finalized policy or operations manual, but we have something that we can work with what we have right now. So the clinical review team, evaluation committee's out, clinical review team information is in. These, as we had talked about on here, guidelines for handling reviews, relapses, or terminations. So yeah, it's up to date with what we're doing now.
Okay. So you can say, like, in terms of the target, so with that target then, so we'll have an updated one with the changes that we need to make for right now in October. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, well, I actually probably have something now that we could put out, but yeah, the target goal was to have by the beginning of October,
Okay.
to have that ready.
In May 2018 or May 2019?
May 2018, the review part was completed, so A was to confirm the policies and procedures of the town through single document, but B was to do the review. So the review was completed, and then compiling everything and writing the documents.
Because
What was the
you
target?
still have to run a program, so you need to have it done and then signed off on to run the program. And then also to outside people, it says, look, whatever you're asking us to do with our recommendations implementation, we still are moving forward to improve and make this better, which again is also important for morale of staff, because it shows, there's a commitment here. And we don't know what's gonna happen, but we still have to do good service.
So do you want to talk about, so we talked about data points a little bit. Does anybody want to talk about 6 and data points that we're collecting more? This has the recommendations from the National Center for State Courts, pro recommendations, what was in the strategic plan, and what's required by statute. So that's something that Lita's going to be continuing to work on, is compiling this information. So we have the data points where it says the target timeframe and status, March 22, 2018. So we've defined these data points and their collection and review periods. Lita, at the end of the year, we're going to collect the information about the outreach and number of schools. We had set a target, I think, of 8 schools by the end of the year for Lita to be attending and doing her outreach with. No comments or question? Okay, and then, I did want to tell you about number 12, which was exciting for us. That was the recommendation to become a consumer-focused agency, putting greater emphasis on customer service. So this participant satisfaction survey is something that Patrick Curl had talked about a lot, and finding a way for the participants to give us feedback about their experience with different aspects of the program, with the clinical rehabilitation coordinators, with their group facilitators, with their experience in the LAP group. So we actually, Matt just sent out our first quarterly satisfaction survey that will be due with the quarterly paperwork that's due for everybody across the program at the end of this month by October 10th. That's why the October 10th deadline is here, because that's when all the paperwork should be in. So it's not a requirement. People are not going to be marked out of compliance if they don't turn in a satisfaction survey, but it's sent out to everybody that they'll have the opportunity to turn it back with the paperwork that's due by that point. And so the reason I bring up Matt, I'm not sure if most of you have met Matt. He's our admin assistant, and he is really good with technology and figuring out how to send this out so that the data that we receive back is automatically populated into a spreadsheet, so we're not going to have to hand tally everything, and then we'll be able to track it in a variety of different ways, so we can see what kind of feedback we're getting from law students, what kind of feedback we're getting from men, from women, from people that were referred by discipline, from the same individual over time. So we'll be able to do a lot of different things with that.
Is there any way that we could have at least preliminary results of that, just to inform what we're doing?
Yeah, we'll see by October 10th what we get in. I think we only, as of, well, obviously yesterday, as of Thursday, there were like 4 responses, I think.
I think maybe there's 7, but probably more than that, because Matt was out yesterday.
Oh, right. So we'll get, we'll, by our next meeting, we should be able to have some from this quarter.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Just how far back are they going with this with respect to participants? Time?
It's current participants.
Okay.
Yeah. The satisfaction survey is current participants. There was already a survey that was going to graduates at the end of their participation period, but this one is for people currently participating.
If he has stuff built and it's electronic, he's doing it, right?
Yes.
Okay, so is there benefit, I'm just throwing this out, is there benefit for us to go back with kind of all the stuff we're having to do to everyone and say, hey, we just want to get your comments about the program and your experience regardless of their status?
I have no problem with it. We try to be a little ambitious, right?
But I am ambitious.
But, I mean, how about this? Let's get the information. But I think we're driving it to get some metrics, why not, at some point in time, make a retroactive, look at our quote-unquote customer base.
Well,
We would probably want to revise it
We're
for-
making huge decisions on a short timeline.
Right.
So that's why I'm like pushing it in the sense of if we can get something, and typically you get a low response rate, so there needs to be more than one send out. You need to do prompts and everything to get
Right.
people to respond. I just feel like we're in such a critical turn point that any additional input and feedback from our customers at this point, past and current, might be helpful. I don't know.
Let's see what we can do there.
Well, I agree with Michelle when she says it should be a little different, because if I were collecting data from the past, and our interest clinically is to improve the quality of their lives, so have they done better? Have they relapsed? Do they have jobs? Things like that. I would be more interested than how the program served you. I'd be more interested in, were you able to utilize the tools given you to stay on track to improve your life, your professional life, your family life, who you basically are as a person, because you're in this program because you either did something wrong or you need some help with substance abuse or whatever.
The reality, Kelly, is you're right. The response is going to be very low to begin with. But if we could get something, that'd be fine. Maybe go back 5 years. I don't know.
People always want to know what's in it for them,
Right.
and if we kind of put it out, rather than just a survey, which sounds very cold, I think it should be like a promotion, an opportunity. It should be looked at more of an opportunity to improve the services that you receive, rather than making a person feel like singularly, well, this is just another survey. I know what I do with surveys. As soon as I see survey, I delete it, I go, but what's in it for me? And I think we could promote it, just promote it a different type of way, so that people just put a kind of positive spin on it. And rather than, if we're just sending out a survey with not a cover letter or any rationale for the way we're doing it.
Do we want to promote it as we want your input into the future of the program? Say the program makes
just something that makes me feel that these are not just numbers. And
we want your voice about your experience, because the program is going to be changing. People are hearing about the state bar changes, right?
Yeah, all of it's been public. I wonder if maybe what I hear Terry saying is more something like, help us improve the lawyer assistance program.
some kind of positive spin on it.
But I think you're saying it should be more compelling than that. It should identify that the program is at a turning point, and this is really significant input. It's not just
It's not an everyday survey.
input to sort of,
Right. Right, it's not an everyday survey, that this is a critical time, and we need your input desperately to help make good changes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what's important obviously is this isn't sort of creating an opportunity to sort of reconvince the board to select option one.
Oh,
right?
we would never do
So I want to make sure that the questions are structured in
How
a
can
way
we
that
slip
sort of
that in?
that would help.
So that's not my intent, that's
Well,
not how I
know-
was thinking of it,
I
but
know.
that's a good point.
Yes, it was just a way of making
Right.
sure we structure the questions. I mean, obviously, and again, right, so we also need to think of a future where the legislature says, no, we like the way it is, so we do want to improve the program, and it's one of the things that we've been doing by implementing the strategic plan. So it's a question of how we finesse it.
And this is where your marketing person comes in,
Yes, but a lot of it will also fall on that for designing and getting the email addresses going back 5 years and sending it out and creating the spreadsheet. So I realistically don't know if we'll be able to get results by the time we need to
Right,
write this
but
thing up
that's okay.
for a month from now. But yeah, it's something just to collect the information for long-term or for after November as we're going forward with trying to implement parts,
Do what we
things that we
can.
want to try and keep and things
Yeah,
like
that's a
that.
good keeper, actually.
Kelly, what do you think about incentives for surveys? Do you know anything about that, like a $5 Starbucks card or something like that? Do you know if those higher response rates or have no effect, or?
That opens up just a whole nother can of
Okay.
worms, yeah, and then some people will, wonder then about what you're getting back and just, yeah.
And we're doing written surveys where they handfill them out, rather than using something like, is it called Monkey or Survey Monkey?
It's not SurveyMonkey, but it's not handwritten, they can do it, it's through Adobe, I think, and they can click the
Everybody knows
options.
how Adobe is.
So the survey that I saw that you sent, or gives them a link to a free download.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then other things that we have not started yet that I know was also important to all of us, number 13, updating the case management system. That involves doing our Lapis update. So it's still on the radar. IT has a project inventory that they were collecting from all of the departments of the bar for what work needs to be done. So I put us on there. We're on the radar for IT, but that's something that hasn't happened yet that we still want to do to eliminate some of the double data entry that we have to do because Lapis isn't able to generate all of the kinds of reports that we want, just not necessarily about statistics, but even on day-to-day operations. So we have two systems, so that's what that one was referring to. So we will do that. And those were the ones, oh, and yeah, those are the ones I was gonna highlight, and now we have different information than when I had written this out about like 18, 19, 20, 21, which are all about separation and what we wanna do with discipline versus voluntary.
Right. I'll give everybody a little bit more time if you want to read this here, and if you want to have a question for Michelle. So take a few minutes.
On the, number 15, where under C, one of the items is a contact us button, and I think that that's under like not, like deferred. I would say, in light of, we're just talking about the contact, and especially with now having the outreach, that, just to make sure that we focus on that, because I think that's really critical, is another way of people reaching out, especially if they're at a session and, they don't want to go up and talk to someone, but they want that easy way to contact.
Yeah, that's in the not yet started, so
Yeah.
Nita will definitely work with communications about that once we get our outreach materials, the rate materials, like the brochure and the flyer down. The next thing we're gonna be talking about is the website.
And that should be fairly easy, I would think, for them to do, because we recently did a contact us button for another part of the website. I imagine that sort of the programming around that should be the same, and it's just a matter of where it goes. So I would think it should be fairly easy for them to get that out fairly quickly.
And I hope it's not where, you click on some contact us and it wants to take you to your email versus the other contact us where you just enter it into the website. So hopefully it's something like that, because then that's, if someone wants to be more anonymous.
Oh, I see what you,
they
I
can
don't
do that.
I don't think it takes you, like, it opens up your own email and Outlook, so maybe something like
Yeah.
that. I think that the one that Donna's talking about has
It's
like a
just in the
fillable
web-based,
form.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now, so I can.
You can test it out.
I'm fairly certain that's exactly how it does it, because there are actually fields for you to fill out.
Yeah, that's the,
So we put one on the ethics hotline, so folks can have an option other than just the call center. They could submit a basically a contact me form, and then, so you just click submit on the form.
Great.
And it submits it.
so that's a good analogy, because, people at times want to do stuff on ethics and not necessarily want to say everything about themselves.
Okay, no other comment. We'll go to item B, recommendation proposed rule changes after review of public.
Okay, so if you all remember, you had previously approved that we request to make some changes to the state bar rules, which we sent to the RAG committee to approve to send out for public comment. The first one is about the eligibility for financial assistance, that we wanted to expand the eligibility to law students. Right now, financial assistance is only available to active and inactive attorneys. So we want to expand it to everybody else who's eligible for the lawyer assistance program, so law students, bar applicants, and former attorneys. This was sent out for public comment, and we received no public comments. So the recommendation of staff is that we move this forward to the board, which would be for their November meeting also, for adoption. So Stuart, I think we need a motion.
So do I hear a motion to proceed with presenting this to the Board of Trustees for approval? Need a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next.
All right, the next one, similarly, the elimination of the evaluation committees. The state board rules have a lot of references to the evaluation committees, which are now obsolete. So this proposal was to replace those references to the evaluation committee with the clinical review team, giving the clinical review team now officially the authority to do what the evaluation committee previously did. So this was sent out for public comment also, and we received no public comment on it. So again, same recommendation that we move this forward to the board for adoption as it was originally proposed.
So I need a motion again to approve this recommendation to present it to the Board of Trustees.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So that concludes our business schedule. I just want to recap. We are going to have a meeting this October 20th here. And that's not in lieu of our December meeting. This is a specialized meeting. And I wanted, because we're taking extra time, I want to just focus it on what we're doing. No other agenda item. Is that fair? We're just going to talk about what Justin and Kelly and Greg, Donna and Michelle come up with and have their presentation. Add our 2 cents worth and then get ready for Halloween. So,
Can I just add one thing, Donna, to your question earlier? So the CBE meeting is actually noticed for October 19 and 20. I don't know if that changes anything.
Yeah, and I just don't know if that's accurate or not. So the
Yeah.
reason what I'm checking right now is, well, actually, so if the CBE meeting is going on, then we're only webcasting that. So we wouldn't be webcasting this, so we could do that over in the LAP office, so I'm not worried about space. If the CBE meeting is not going on, then I'm not worried about space because
Okay.
there would be space.
but we'll figure it out.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, I was checking the calendar, but I realized that problem resolves itself either way.
Okay. With that, I need a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for your attendance and your participation. See you on the 20th, and or I'll talk to some of you before then. Have a great weekend.
I know, I think so.
I think this is our, Stuart, I think this is our shortest ever meeting.